Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. And so the curtain falls on the 2024-25 campaign. It's ended for Norwich City with a 4-2 victory here at Carrow Road against already relegated Cardiff. A blistering 20-minute spell, really, in the first half, enough to win that game. And an emotional day, I guess, of send-offs and whatnot here at Carrow Road for those that we know, maybe for some that we don't know yet, ahead of obviously what is going to be an immensely busy summer, and we'll do a little bit of season reflection towards the end as well. This was Jack Wilshere's second game of two in interim charge here at Norwich City after obviously Johannes Torup's departure after the Easter Monday defeat to Millwall. And I know there's going to be a lot of focus on him and that, and whether this was enough or wasn't enough, to be honest, given I think you have to place this game in the context of what it was, which I don't think we necessarily learned a lot about Norwich or Wilshere or the way he'd go or the way he wouldn't go or whether he's right or whether he's not right. Because today was so much mired in, substitutions that wouldn't ordinarily be made. You had Angus Gunn coming off after 89 minutes. Onel Hernandez obviously came on. I think that's the biggest chunk of football he's had for a significant period of time. Jakob Sorensen as well at right back. So you have to put all of those things in context. But look, as an audition, 4 points over 2 games. Certainly players have come out, and I've spoken to Angus Gunn and Callum Doyle. Both of them have said they'd like to see Jack Wilshere get the job on a permanent basis. Clearly, maybe there's some irrelevance to that because they're not going to be here next season, but that is the feeling. I think you can sense just in the playing group and the mood around the place what he's done in terms of those soft skills to lift the group, to add some energy and positivity back in, and some enjoyment again. And equally, there's been some good tactical stuff that we've seen, and particularly in that first half. So I mean, let's go through the game. Norwich City made one change. Michael Forson came in, more on him a little bit later. But I thought they started the game pretty poorly, actually. For the opening 12 minutes or so, Angus Gunn has had to produce at least 3 magnificent saves, really good saves, and one from Joe Rules, which was a volley. There was a Callum Chambers header. Salech had one as well, I think, and there were a couple of blocked shots. And Cardiff started the game in the ascendancy. They were the better team. They were playing with positivity and energy. And actually, I think if that would have been the game over 90 minutes, it would have been stood here today with a much better judgment of maybe what Norwich City would look like under Jack Wilshere next season. But that wasn't the way it transpired. And Norwich got the opening goal. But lovely reverse pass from Michael Forson into the path of Jack Stacey, pulled it back. Nunez then applies the finish. And then minutes later, Josh Sargent turns the Cardiff defence. Callum Chambers brings him down. That's the red card. And from there, really, it felt like a little bit of a procession for Norwich. But between that first goal, obviously the red card within that, and then the 2 that they added, a brilliant Marcelino Nunez free kick. I think that's the first one he scored this season, and comes after Johannes Torup a few weeks ago. I remember hearing him in the press room speaking about how he hadn't had any of those these seasons or this season. So I'm sure he's watching probably from afar somewhere and maybe feeling a little bit annoyed that it's today that Marcelino Nunez produced that. And then obviously the third goal as well. So yeah, from that period there was some really nice stuff from Borja Sainz, that Norwich did, and that third goal was beautifully crafted. I think it was McLean into Nunez, lovely reverse pass, and Sainz then supplied the finish. That means he ends the season in one behind Joel Perreault, who takes the golden boot. There was a golden boot here at Carrow Road this afternoon, and Borja Sainz had chances, but within that period, Norwich hit the post. I think McConville hit the bar with a header. They had 4, 5, 6 opportunities to really extend the scoreline and were in complete control. They probably benefited and exploited Cardiff's struggles. They didn't really get to grips after playing with 10 men. They made one sub, and then they made a second on 31 minutes. And after that second one on 31 minutes, I felt they grasped the game a little bit. In the second half, they were better, and Norwich probably got a little bit lapse, I felt, in terms of I thought they were better on the ball in terms of the way they played, but there's still this sort of element within them where they are so open and they really struggle to defend transitions. And we saw that in the second half. They were bypassing Jacob Wright or other midfielders and stretching the game wide. They had pace on either side of O'Dowda and Ashford and really exploited that and caused Norwich problems. Salach as well. First time I've seen him, but for a relegated team, he looks a real handful. Good size. I think he's 23, Danish. Not that I'm sort of touting him or being his agent, but on the basis of purely what I've seen today, I'd be surprised if he wasn't playing at least Championship football, maybe elsewhere in Europe next season. But yeah, it was a more difficult second half. I felt Norwich probably didn't have as much control as they would have liked in that first half. And I spoke about this a little bit last week against Middlesbrough. You could see a real aggression in terms of their placement of the centre-backs. And their deepest sort of player was about, if I go over my shoulder, I can show you in visual terms, was about there at points. That's where their 2 centre-backs were positioned. And we didn't really see that aggression in positioning from Torop, I would say, over the piece, where his centre backs used to be stationed quite a bit deeper, and the game used to try and make it a little bit deeper. This one's more condensed, and it's more under Wilshere focused on variations and those kind of little cute combinations on the edge of the box to create space. And as I said, for that 20-minute spell, I thought they did that really well. Cardiff became more compact. They went almost to a back five in the second half. They limited the space and forced Norwich wide, and that sort of opened the game up a little bit for when crosses were coming in the box, and they had those transitional moments to then break and cause issues. But in many ways, it was the greatest hits of Norwich City 24-25, and that we saw some attacking brilliance. We saw some shambolic defending. We saw some, areas where clearly there's a need to improve going into next year. And Wilshere recognises that if it's going to be him or anyone else, he recognises that. And really, that's been the Achilles heel this year, because you look at the goals that they've scored, particularly here at Carrow Road, where they have scored 4, 5, 6 against teams here, and won games emphatically under Torop, obviously today as well. But they've still conceded 2. There was one, Callum Doyle bundled down Selec in the box for the opening one. Really silly decision he admitted to me that post-game, and was very honest in that reflection. And then the second one comes from a third phase of a set piece, which is kind of flicked to the back post by Josh Sargent. O'Dowda knocks it across, and Selec applied a really cute finish, to be fair. And then obviously Shane Duffy rose to get Norwich City a corner of their own. And to be honest, there was some real imagination in some of their set pieces. There was a nice one where they played it short and worked it to the back post, and Nunez had a clear run at it, made good contact, and Horvath made a good save. There was another one where they went short and freed up Sainz on the edge of the box to get a shot away, and just wasn't quite able to convert. So there was some nice imagination from those aspects, which is something I think we've seen grow in the last 6 weeks or so from Norwich City. They have been more potent and more of a threat from set pieces. I think that's no coincidence that aligns with Jacob Wright's time at the club. He's got a wicked delivery on him, and when you've got that quality consistently to put the ball not just in certain areas but very deliberately and have that capability to put it in different areas, it doesn't half open you up to new ideas and new facets, rather than perhaps hoping that something's going to be there. You kind of know where that ball is going to go in, and it wasn't his best game today for Norwich City by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly from a set piece perspective, he gives them a real threat, and that is that's hopefully what we'll see a lot more of moving into next season. So yeah, look, I think particularly second half, it's very difficult to cast a definitive judgment, and the reality is it would have been over these 2 games anyway, because you look at the basis for what Jack Wilshere's remit was. Really, it was to come in, it was to inject a bit of energy, a bit of enthusiasm in the place, and he's gone to unbeaten Norwich. Have taken 4 points. Doesn't do anything in terms of the league table, because they were always going to finish in mid-table. They've finished 11 points outside of the playoffs, 9 points from relegation. That kind of proves they were never really probably involved in any of them. Of course, they were more involved in the top 6 race than they were in that relegation race at any point this season. But it's the second bottom half finish since relegation from the Premier League. So 2 in 3 seasons. Obviously, the 6th place finish last season is the only one that they finished inside the top half. I think it's the same position that they finished in that first year under Dean Smith and David Wagner. And clearly, for what they've done over this 3 years, which the aim was to get back to the Premier League, they've failed to do that. And this year they failed to get in the top 6, and it's been a funny old season. So look, on Wilshere, I've got a sense. First and foremost, not that it means much, but I think he presents himself well, and you can see it with the fans today. There is a guy there who looks like he has the energy, the hunger, the desire to take it on. That doesn't necessarily mean he's got the capabilities, but I think we have seen over the 2 games some nice coaching quirks. I think we've seen some nice tactical variations. We saw sort of the width at Middlesbrough, where they used the wing backs, and Jack Stacey was very effective. And today I thought some of the connections and variations and movements that they had in the attacking sense was very interesting and kind of fresh as well. There's still the fundamentals there. He wants to dominate the ball. But I think clearly this group has shown defensively there's weakness in it, and that feels increasing. I said this ages ago on my verdict that now it feels like they probably need some external help to try and improve that and shift that. And clearly structurally as well, it's going to be a challenge for whoever the head coach is, be it Wilshere or anyone else. And for Cardiff, I think basically to win the second half 2-1 and to score the goals they did, but it was the moments they created, even in that opening 12 minutes. I think that will be a concern for everybody really, because Yeah, Norwich should have had more control over this one. That being said, I think again you have to wrap around the mitigation, the context of the occasion, and the substitutions that were made maybe weren't what we would describe as kind of normal ones that we would expect throughout a game. And yeah, clearly as well there was very little on the line here this afternoon. It felt very end of season-y, to be honest, all round from start to finish, and you have to put that into context as well. So have we learned a lot more about Jack Wilshere? I don't think he's done his chances any harm, and that's probably coming out of the process a net positive. It will be interesting, obviously, now to see the direction of travel, the way that Norwich City decide to go with it. I think you've got there clearly a very enthusiastic, very energised number one. I think if I was looking at it today, and if I was Ben Napper and I decided that Wilshere was the one for me, then I'd like to see probably some obviously he's got Tony Roberts in there, and Nick Stanley, I know he thinks very highly of those two and is very appreciative of the work they've done in stepping up and maybe doing slightly different roles in the last 10 days or so. But feels to me like he needs a little bit more experience in that staff as well. And I think that would be no bad thing. But I think there probably is a feeling here today. And you can see it. There was Wilshere at the wheel at the end. I mean, how much of a stock do you read into these things? I don't know. But I think the idea feels like it's maybe growing on some. Clearly, there'll be people who don't want it to be Jack Wilshere. But I don't think he's harmed his chances. So we'll see how that unfolds. In terms of today, I want to speak about Manquil Forson because I thought he was excellent today. First league start since November. He's not really been getting any minutes, but every time I watch him play, you can see there's a footballer in there, and you can see it today. Some of the passes he was threading through. They're the type of passes really that in this Norwich group we've only sort of really seen from Emi Marcondes this season, where a little slid ball through to Jack Stacey for the first goal. There was a brilliant range of passes. He went very, very close with a curling shot in the first half here, and just his all-round play, the energy, the running, the athleticism. He looks bigger now. You think about and kind of stronger and sort of upper body strength a lot better compared to maybe that opening day at Oxford where he came out with immense credit. And he is, for me, one of the players now that, along with the likes of Jose Cordoba, Antti Sienats, others as well, Oscar Schwartel, although he's 18, I think he's got a little bit more time on his side. But he's the type of player you'd really like to see step up next season. I do think that he is a player that is suited to certain occasions, and clearly games at Carrow Road where Norwich City are expected to dominate the ball in one of those kind of 8.5, 10 positions to get on the final line, to use that creativity, to get between the lines, to be involved in some of those neat rotations that bring him wide, that take him in. And he's clearly a very talented technical player. It's just that adding that championship robustness and that ability to maybe compete in the games where Norwich can go away from home and the pressure's very different. There's a lot more running. There's a lot more minerals involved. That's now the bit he needs to add if he wants to be, I think, a consistent championship footballer. But impressed with him today. And yeah, I think clearly a nice day for Angus. It didn't end with a clean sheet he would have liked, but a nice send off for him to get that moment to go off and get the applause of this fan base is, yeah, superb and what he deserved. And obviously on El Hernandez as well. We spoke to him in the week. He was very emotional leading into this and didn't quite get the goal, but I think he was in the Barclay at one point and all the way around. He was the last man of the lap of honour. And I think irrespective of what you think of that man and his footballing contribution over the last 2 or 3 years, it's difficult to look at him and not root for him because of how much he adores Norwich, because of how much it's meant to him. I mean, he's a guy that came here with nothing. He had not nothing, but he had no family. He didn't speak English. He was playing in the second tier of Germany. He's come to Carrow Road. He's won 2 championship titles. He's made over 200 appearances. Yes, a lot of those have come from the bench. And he's taken Norwich City in and he's embraced himself in all aspects of the club and the community. And anyone who does that is all right in my book. And look, this is the right time, I think, probably for him, for Jakob Sorensen as well. Had an interesting chat with Angus after the game. He was very quick to make the point that no conversations had been had over a new contract, that he was informed last week of his release via a 2-minute conversation with Ben Napper, which feels like it's a shame that is the way it's ended for a player who's given so much to this club. And you think about his journey. He came in as a number 2 in the Premier League. He's established himself as number 1. He kind of leapt over Tim Krul. That was no mean feat at the time with what Tim Krul achieved here and his brilliance at points. He's become an international goalkeeper. He's played in the Premier League with Norwich, which I know was a lifelong aspiration and dream for him. So Not a bad stint, all told. And somebody in the Championship or elsewhere is going to get themselves a very good goalkeeper. And I suspect that, given George Long hasn't been included in the last few matchday squads, that Norwich City are going to be in the realm where they need two this summer. And that is going to be a big task, I think, to replace them both. And of course, the work doesn't start and stop there, because you look at the season and you look at what Norwich have done this year. It has been rarely stable. It's been inconsistent. It's been up and down. The moments they had to really push their foot down, they didn't quite have the ability. I would maybe think more about kind of the minerals, the mentality, the mental capacity to go further. You think about after that Watford win, where they had that run of 7 games, where maybe if they did push down the accelerator, we'd be talking about a top 6 season, or scoring obviously late against Blackburn. I think if any of those moments they fall the right side of, then maybe this season becomes very different. But maybe it doesn't, because this group of players has struggled to really find any sort of consistency. And that's a shame, I think, when you look at the attacking talent they've got in that dressing room, with Borja Sainz, who I thought was excellent today. Josh Sargent didn't get a goal, but again has been excellent today. Could well have been the last time that we see either of those in yellow and green today. Nunez was very good. It's not been the best few weeks for him. I've been quite critical of his performances on here of late. I thought he was excellent today. Brilliant free kick. That's the ability that we want to see more of from him. But again, maybe slightly inconsistent. And yeah, I think it's hard not to look through this season with a lens of regret and a lens of disappointment at the way it's kind of turned out and unfolded. When you think about before that start at Oxford, there was so much energy and optimism and enthusiasm and hope that this was going to be a fresh new era, and actually Norwich City have ended the season managerless, likely in need of significant churn to their playing group, and a lot of work required on that squad if they want to ensure that next season isn't similar. And a lot of those decisions are ones that they're going to have to get right to get them up the table. I think Wilshire's right in one respect, and I've said this a few times. I really don't think, and of course this is, I recognise maybe a slightly redundant statement now, given the context of what I've just given, with players that are going to leave and move on. But, you watch Norwich from an attacking sense and on the ball at points, and you think, whoa, blimey, they're not a million miles away. But out of possession, they were too easy to play against too regularly. They were too easy to score against readily. The goalkeeping department didn't quite do enough for them. The defensive department didn't quite do enough for them until recent weeks, but certainly in terms of goalkeepers, where Angus's performances included. I don't think it's helped that he's kind of had that uncertainty around him all season and whatnot. And look, defensively, there's clearly a need for a better structure there, and that is probably one of the red flags that did run through Torup's reign, that we didn't quite ever see them nail that, and that is a disappointment, because if they'd have done that, if they'd have been a little bit more robust, if they could have kept a few more clean sheets, I think we could have been, perhaps even should have been, talking about a Norwich team that, if not in the top 6, definitely would have been closer than the 11 points they finished it. And that I think will be the major frustration for everyone involved. And in many ways, even though this season is done, clearly the hard work continues now. They need to appoint a new head coach and get business moving now in terms of the summer to try and get a head start and get them in a good place, but also to try and renew some optimism amongst the fan base that clearly over the last 3 years is feeling shortchanged over what is seen, barring kind of 6 months under David Wagner, where clearly they had a remarkable run from 17th to the playoffs. It's not been too much to get behind, and runs and sustained periods that have been really enjoyable. And that's the element now, that's the facet that they have to try and change, and they have to try and renew, and have to try and bring that sense of fun and joy back to this place. And, on paper, it looks like a stronger Championship next year. You never know, but that's how it looks at the moment. And you get a few of those decisions wrong, and Cardiff are a good example. Stoke, we could list other clubs, QPR, Hull. They're good examples of how, if you make wrong decisions, you can get punished for it pretty quickly in this league. So it's a huge summer. We say it every summer, but this one in particular feels absolutely massive. And it's now up to the people who make those decisions to ensure that they get more right than wrong. And that's the aim. And hopefully we stood here at the end of next season speaking about a campaign that's been more consistent and ended with a better result, and not finished with Norwich City in 13th, for us wishing that maybe that is where they finished, and it is actually worse than that. So yeah, look, it's been a funny old year. I want to end, of course, by saying thank you to all of you guys who have watched the verdicts after every game, have left comments, good, bad, ugly, whatever, abusive to me. There's not been that many. You've all been lovely. It's been a really bizarre season. It's probably the best way I would describe it. really good flashes of good, and when they were good, they were intoxicating. And when they were bad, they were dismal. Yeah, we've hopefully, as a team, tried to reflect what we've seen in front of our eyes. Also, ask the questions you guys want us to ask, and try to follow the campaign every twist and turn, home and away, the best way we can, to give you guys the best insight, the best kind of access to the club that you can get. So yeah, thank you very much for following. Thank you very much for watching, for reading, for listening. We will, of course, I don't think we're going to get much rest. We'll go through the summer and bring you all the updates as they happen. And then, of course, blink and you'll miss it, and we'll be at the start of pre-season again. Thank you very much for watching, not just today, but throughout this championship season. Enjoy your summer, and we'll see you again very soon.